Do you like silly name jokes? Because I hope you really like silly name jokes. Here we are again, my friends. Time to talk about Star Trek Lower Decks. We're talking about Season 3, Episode 7, entitled A Mathematically Perfect Redemption. Spoilers do lie in wait, so if that's not your thing, you have been warned. So now, on with the show. So one thing I do want to mention, I am doing this video a bit unlike my normal Star Trek videos. Since this is Lower Decks, I've decided it's more apt to do a discussion instead of a scene-by-scene analysis, as I tend to do with my Star Trek reviews. However, I did pick a bad week to do this because for the first time in a long time, Lower Decks has actually done a entirely self-contained story without too many ABC plots and Easter eggs. So that was, again, to my surprise, possibly the worst time I could have chosen to do this, but on with the show. So like I said, this is kind of an odd duck for the show, or should I say an odd exocomp? I'm not going to put in a boo there, even though I'm probably capable of doing it, because A, that joke was funny to me, and B, pretending that I don't have the ability to put in a boo makes it also funny, so double funny there for you. So we spent very little time with our crew in this episode. In fact, they didn't even come in until the end, and we didn't even have our normal credit sequence. Instead of having the normal opening credits of our show, we had a flashback and recreation of the end of the very first season finale of Season 1, well, you know, where the Cerritos was surrounded by the Pac-Leds and the Titan came in at the last moment to save their ass. We saw a recreation of that from the perspective of our returning main character for this episode, Peanut Hamper. And am I the only one who remembers her being named Peanut Butter Hamper originally? Apparently that's not the case. I looked online, nobody is referencing that, so apparently CERN turned on, shot me into a parallel universe where the only change is adding butter to the name of this very silly character in a Star Trek series. I don't know why it couldn't have put me in a universe where I'm madly rich, but I guess I'll take what I can. Anywho, we discover that after the Titan and the Cerritos flew off to safety at the end of Season 1, Peanut Hamper was stranded in the debris field left over from that battle with the Pac-Leds, so there's all sorts of technology and whatnot floating around. She was obviously not willing to put out a distress call because she kind of abandoned her post and thought that she would be brought up on charges of, I don't know, treason or something like that. So she's left floating there for quite a while, I guess probably through the entirety of Season 2, trying to rebuild a way to escape. She doesn't need oxygen, she doesn't need fuel apparently, so it's fine. She builds this barely warp-capable sled, and just in time because the Drumaki scavengers show up in order to lay claim to all of that debris that was in this field, and she is barely able to get out of there in this warp-capable sled that she built. Unfortunately, she is required to sacrifice her one and only friend, her Wilson the volleyball-esque companion that she had built out of scrap, and she doesn't care whatsoever. She's like, see ya, I don't care. I don't even know if it's foreshadowing because it is quite obvious what they're planning to do. But I digress. So after this escape, she ends up landing on a planet filled with sci-fi and Star Trek tropes and cliches. It's populated with a tribalistic, primitive owl creature type race. Also to note, all the animals on this planet are equipped with wings, so that is kind of an interesting kind of twist on things. It reminds me a bit of maybe crossing Avatar, not The Last Airbender, the James Cameron Avatar, with, for what surprised me, the owl mother from the Sonic movie. I have no idea if these two things were in their mind when they were doing this. Those are just what they reminded me of. We go through our typical Star Trek cliches of the primal people learning that technology isn't so bad through their interaction with Peanut Hamper, and Peanut Hamper learning that living with nature isn't necessarily as bad as she would think. Warp-capable people don't have everything figured out. They can learn from each other. Psych. That's actually not what's going on. It was all a twist. The Drukmani show up to claim the salvage rights to this planet because dun dun dun. The owl creatures are not in fact primitive tribalistic individuals. They were a once proud warp-capable species that retreated to their planet when they learned that the galaxy was a hostile place they didn't want to participate in anymore. So they went back to their roots, kind of similar to the Baku from Star Trek Insurrection and other people that we have seen throughout sci-fi and Star Trek in general. That was a big twist. It won't be the only twist because this episode loves to tie everything up in a twist before the resolution of everything. Now that the Drukmani are attacking attacking this planet that our lovely Peanut Hamper has come to love, she decides to finally put out that distress call to Starfleet because that is one thing she is able to do. She needs to save this planet, the people that she has grown to love. She's actually in a relationship with an organic, that's right, the son of the chief himself. She has had a love affair with this man. She is in love with this primitive race. Has she grown? Has she become the character she was always meant to be by her interactions here? Well, shock and awe, no. Because as it turns out, she was the one who contacted the Drukmani to begin with. After she learned that the primitive people were not so primitive and had technology, she figured she'd call and let these scavengers know that, hey, why don't you come to this planet? You can have the exclusive rights to all their salvage. Still not entirely sure what her point was here for this, but I digress because it's another twist in a curvy story. So somehow the Cerritos is the nearest ship after her distress call. Maybe that was an homage to the fact that every single time there's a disaster in Star Trek, the Enterprise is the closest ship. So I do think that was kind of a funny moment there. So more shock and awe because Peanut Hamper was the betrayer. So once the Cerritos shows up, there's a big battle scene. The day is saved at a high cost, and then Peanut Hamper decides to piece the hell out of there because she hasn't actually learned a thing. She was never going to change her ways. There was no problems that were actually going to be overcome in this. For some reason, she was just trying to save her ass, like always. So it seems like all that they were doing in this episode was taking that very one specific defining trait of the sentient exocomps from TNG, which was basically they figured out they were sentient by the fact that they did not want to die. They were trying to do self-preservation, and it appears that is the sole trait that is defining Peanut Hamper here, self-preservation. She doesn't care about anything else. She just wants to go on surviving. And while I do think that some of the cliches were played up a little too much, that actually was a bit clever. Now, I don't know if that really makes sense for the fact that this would be her one defining trait and she never could grow beyond that. But it was nice to see the subversion of the expectations, and it was a nice little extra triple twist at the end of the episode. Try saying that. I just did it 14 times and I barely got it out the last one. So all in all, I do think this is a relatively fine episode. Your mileage will obviously vary on whether or not you're a fan of this type of story, and if you can stand the character of Peanut Hamper. She is a bit annoying and grating, but I do believe that was part of the intention. Overall, I found the story to be mostly interesting, if not anything groundbreaking, and the best part, in my opinion, was a cameo of Jeffrey Combs again at the end of this episode. So after Peanut Hamper is inevitably captured and put in some sort of AI jail by Starfleet, she's put in there with other sentient AIs and computers and, all those sorts of things. And she's put right next to the Jeffrey Combs computer from last season. So I'm very interested to see if they're going to play up some sort of connection between them and possibly, let's bring back Badgie. And I'm going to go ahead and say season 5. Will they all come back to start some sort of computer war? I don't know, but that'd be very interesting to see a little more of them because I think they're all interesting characters in and of themselves. Whether or not they can carry a storyline remains to be seen. This episode also kind of resolved one of the issues I've had with the show in a way I was not expecting whatsoever. I've wanted more storylines where the characters don't diverge and we really only have one story going on. I never in my wildest dreams assumed it would be without the main crew or cast of the show. It would be a glorified extra from one episode. So that was very, very interesting and I enjoyed it. I do enjoy where they don't split up into A, B, C, D stories because, like I said, the show is so short compared to hour-long Star Trek shows that you don't have a lot of time and meat on the bone for the stories. So when they don't split it into various pieces, it actually feels tighter and like you're actually going on a journey instead of splitting up into, 3 minutes with this character, 2 minutes with this character, 1 minute back with the other character. I found this an overall more fulfilling type of story, at least in my opinion. That's pretty much it for me. What did you think of this episode? What do you think of this show overall? Do you think it's going in a good direction, or can you not stand it? Are you just meh and you don't really care about it because it's animated? Leave me all your thoughts, a comment, a like below, and whatever. Until next time, computer and program.